Good evening, you're watching this Mongolian World. I'm your host, Anurgan Batar. And for top stories, $51.6 million in developing banks senior notes were repurchased. One blood donation can save as many as 3 lives. Figure skating is growing in popularity in Mongolia. And for the news, stay tuned. Blood donors say that donating blood can be an emotional experience for the donor and the recipient. Experienced donor Orunzal, who has been donating blood since 2016, describes her donation as life-saving accomplishment and an experience to be proud of.
She hopes her numerous donations have helped people live active, healthy, happy, and normal lives.
When something unexpected happens in your life, and when your loved ones have health problems, you realize the importance of donating blood. I had that experience when my close friend was bedridden and hospitalized. Later, she told me that thought that her best friend's donated blood was flowing in her body gave her the strength to fight for her life. When I first started donating blood, I encountered older, experienced donors here at the blood center. I was surprised by how healthy and energetic they were.
According to a recent study conducted in Mongolia, 93.2% of respondents thought that blood donation was a good deed. In 2015, 34.1% of respondents in another survey about blood donation said that donating blood could trigger anemia. The belief in this misconception slightly decreased in 2019 when only 24.5% of respondents believed that donating blood can cause anemia. Around 150 people a day visit our 3 blood centers to donate blood. In addition, mobile blood donation centers visit organizations like universities or companies that have applied for blood donation. Mobile centers gather blood from around 60 people a day.
Whether it's surgery, a major accident, or difficulties during labor, the first thing needed is a blood transfusion. We understand our responsibilities and blood donors are always on standby. We also always take care of our health.
According to the World Health Organization, 1 blood donation can save as many as 3 lives. Sustainable and high-quality blood services play a critical role in the health of a society and in preparing for and responding to disasters.
Figure skating is a popular winter sport, but it's not well developed in Mongolia. Martlirtan Gasukh is the only skater who represents Mongolia at International Skating Union Championships. An MNB reporter spoke to her during her ice show at Ulaanbaatar Steppe Arena Sports Complex.
Martlirtan's family moved to Japan when she was 5 years old. When she was 11, she started training with famous Japanese coach Nagakubo. Her professional skating career started with the 2011 Asian Winter Games. Nagoya, the city I live in, is famous for its figure skating. Famous skaters like Mao Asada and Ando Miki are from Nagoya. Even though 11 years old was quite old for starting to train, thanks to my family's support and my teachers, I finally became a professional skater.
She used to wake up very early to train. The training would continue until very late in the day, so I used to accompany her when she was little. Now that she is growing up, I only accompany her to international competitions.
Martlirtan is a graduate of Chukyo University in Japan. Her master's degree thesis explained the physics of how figure skating impacts an athlete's body. She says only a few studies on the theme have been conducted internationally. My research focused on 2 types of jumps that figure skaters do, especially on how a skater's foot is grounded on the ice during particular jumps, and on the human body's center of gravity. During my research, I observed different skaters and used different measurement equipment.
I heard that research work on sports played on the ground, like baseball, was quite common. But the research and study of winter sports, especially ice skating, was relatively rare.
Such research can contribute to developing figure skating in Mongolia. Last year, Marlerden taught ice skating classes for 50 children in Ulaanbaatar. Lately, figure skating has become quite popular among younger Mongolians. I attended classes last summer. She taught me a lot of new things. During the 14-day course, I learned a lot of new techniques. During the Winter Olympics, a lot of people call our organization and ask for contact information for figure skating coaches or trainers. It was very difficult and disappointing to tell those people that we didn't have trainers. Thanks to Marlerden, other trainers and coaches will come to Mongolia. Marlerden is currently working on her doctoral dissertation in Japan. After completing her studies, she plans to return to Mongolia to work as a professional trainer. She says the state should support developing figure skating in Mongolia.
Now let's take a look at Mongolia's current affairs.
The Board of Directors of Development Bank of Mongolia announced a series of repurchases of the aggregate principal amount of $51.6 million for the $500 million in senior notes issued in October 2018 and due in 2023. The repurchases were carried out through on-market purchases. The 2023 notes are listed on the Singapore Exchange and were repurchased in a series of transactions in March and April 2020 and October and November 2022. The cancellation of the repurchased 2023 notes was complete on January 23rd of this year. Following cancellation, the aggregate outstanding principal amount of 2023 notes is $448 million. The 2023 notes were repurchased at an average price of $86.69 per $100 for the principal amount of the 2023 notes.
Thank you for staying with us. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Here's the international news from our partner agencies. Turkey's president has suggested his country might approve Finland's application for NATO membership before taking any action on Sweden's, while the Turkish government issued a travel warning for European countries due to anti-Turkish demonstrations and what it described as Islamophobia.
The travel warning published late Saturday followed demonstrations last weekend outside the Turkish embassy in Sweden, where an anti-Islam activist burned the Quran and pro-Kurdish groups protested against Turkey. The event stiffened Turkey's refusal to ratify Sweden's NATO bid. Sweden and Finland applied jointly to become members of the military alliance, dropping their long-standing military non-alignment following Russia's war on Ukraine. In a pre-recorded video of an event released Sunday, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan indicated that Turkey might sign off on only Finland. If needed, we could give a different message about Finland. Sweden will be shocked when we give the different message about Finland, Erdogan said to a group of young people in Bilecik. Turkey has accused the government in Stockholm of being too lenient toward groups it deems as terror organizations or existential threats, including Kurdish groups. NATO requires unanimous approval of its existing members to add new ones, but Erdogan's government has said it would only agree to admit Sweden if the country met its conditions. In its travel warning to citizens, the Turkish Foreign Ministry cited an increase in anti-Turkish protests by groups with links to terror groups, a reference to the Kurdistan Workers' Party or PKK, which has waged a decades-long insurgency against Turkey. Along with Turkey, the European Union and the United States also designate the PKK as a terror group. Pro-Kurdish groups have waved the flags of the PKK and its affiliates during protests in Sweden organized as a response to Sweden and Finland's promise to prevent the PKK's activities in their countries in order to gain Turkey's approval for their NATO memberships. Turkey is demanding the extradition of alleged PKK militants as well as some followers of Fethullah Gülen, the Muslim cleric accused of the 2016 attempted coup. In December, the Swedish Supreme Court said the country cannot extradite Bülent Kineş, the former editor-in-chief of newspaper linked to Gülen, angering Turkey. Turkey also strongly condemned far-right activist Rasmus Paludan's burning of the Quran last weekend in Stockholm, which he repeated in Copenhagen Friday. Ankara summoned the Dutch ambassador after another far-right activist tore pages of the Quran in The Hague. Following last week's protests, Erdogan warned Sweden not to expect support for its membership bid for the military alliance. Turkey also indefinitely postponed a key meeting in Brussels that would have discussed Sweden and Finland's NATO membership.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Sunday discussed security and the Ukrainian conflict with South Korea's foreign minister in Seoul. During the talks with Park Jin, Stoltenberg said that the security of NATO and South Korea are more and more interconnected.
He explained that North Korea is providing military support to the Russian war efforts with rockets and missiles, and this just highlights how we are interconnected. Stoltenberg is also expected to visit Japan during his trip to Asia.
We also know that our security is more and more interconnected. We are, of course, concerned about the reckless missile tests and the nuclear programs of North Korea, and the war in Ukraine has also ramifications for your region. And we also know that North Korea is providing military support to the Russian war efforts with rockets and missiles, and this just highlights how we are interconnected.
Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. Record 45-time Grand Sumo Tournament winner Hak Ho, or known as Dawa Jarl Muhwat, had his retirement ceremony Saturday when his top knot was cut, one strand at a time, by some 290 acquaintances, including former wrestlers and prominent figures in Japan. A retirement ceremony was held on Saturday for former sumo grand champion Hak Ho at the Ryokogu Gokugigan in Tokyo. He won the most ever 45 tournament, chalking up 1,187 wins before retiring in 2021 after that year's autumn Grand Sumo tournament. A retirement ceremony was held on Saturday for former sumo grand champion Hak Ho at the Ryokogu Gokugigan in Tokyo. He then took over the Miyagi-no stable, becoming its new stable master last July. At the ceremony held 16 months after his retirement, the new Miyagi-no stable master had his last bout with his son Mahato and then performed a ring entering ceremony that drew loud applause. The Mongolian-born Hak Ho retired in September 2021, and fellow former Yokozuna Kisena Sato, former Prime Minister Yoshiro Mori, and Toyota Motor Corporation President Akio Toyoda were among the participants at Tokyo's Ryokogu Gokugigan. Hak Ho wiped away tears when former Yokozuna Harumo Fuji, also from Mongolia, snipped at the base of the knot before his former stable master Sumo Elder Magaki finally removed the band worn by active wrestlers. Hak Ho also performed his final ring entering ceremony with New Year Basho winning Oseki Takakisho, serving as sword bearer, and Sekiwake Hoshoryu, the nephew of former Mongolian-born Yokozuna Asashiri, as usher. The 69th Yokozuna Hak Ho set many records in Japan's national sport, including 1,187 Kyoryu wins. He took over Miyagi-no stable last July. "I've promised I'll raise Yokozuna and Ozaki as fast as I can and return to the race rink next time as their master," said Hak Ho, who rubbed his head against the dohyo surface after the ceremony. "That was to show my gratitude to the raised rink." Novak Djokovic matched Rafael Nadal's record of 22 Grand Slam men's singles titles by winning the Australian Open on Sunday, beating Stefanos Tsitsipas in the final. Novak Djokovic was unable to play in last year's tournament due to his COVID-19 vaccination status, already held the record for most Australian Open men's singles titles, but the Serbian has now lifted the Norman Brooks Challenge Cup on 10 occasions.
Of course, I am motivated to win as many slams as possible. At this stage of my career, these trophies are the biggest motivational factor of why I still compete. So that's the case, without a doubt. I never really liked comparing myself to others, but of course it's a privilege to be part of the discussion of as one of the greatest players of all time. And if people see me this way, of course it's very flattering, because I know that I give as much as effort and energy into trying to win slams as anybody else, and I still have lots of motivation. Let's see how far it takes me. I really don't want to stop here. I don't have intention to stop here. I feel great about my tennis. I know that when I'm feeling good, physically, mentally present, that I have a chance to win any slam against anybody.
An 11th victory in 13 career meetings with Tsitsipas, this one taking 3 hours, will lift Djokovic back to the top of the world rankings, and his 93rd ATP Tour level title breaks a tie with Nadal for the 4th most in men's tennis history. Greece's Tsitsipas had been chasing a maiden Grand Slam title, with his only previous appearance in a final at this level coming at the 2021 French Open, where he was also beaten by Djokovic. Tsitsipas, 24, was left to reflect on another defeat by Djokovic in what was his second major final, and insisted he has what it takes to eventually become a Grand Slam champion. The Greek was seeded 3rd at Melbourne Park, led by 2 sets when the pair met in the 2021 French Open final before Djokovic fought back to win. This time he was not allowed to gain the advantage against a locked-in Djokovic. Tsitsipas described the loss at Roland Garros as heartbreaking, but was much more upbeat after Sunday's defeat.
Well, I did everything possible in order to get a good match against him, and my team is working exceptionally to give me the best way that I can approach this, especially today. There is nothing that I didn't use to my advantage, or there's nothing that I could have extracted more for today. I did everything possible. Novak is a player that pushes you to your limits, and I don't see this as a curse. I don't see this as like something annoying. This is very good for the sport, to have competitors like him, to have champions like him. It's very important for us that want to get to his point one day, and getting our asses kicked is for sure a very good lesson every single time. He has made me a much better player. He has made my levels of concentration get higher and higher every single time I get to play him.
Novak Djokovic, after climbing into the box to celebrate with his team and family, he broke into tears and lay down in the middle of them as the magnitude of his achievement hit home. Djokovic continued sobbing under his towel when he returned to his chair onto the court. The win sees him return to world number 1 for a record-extending 374th week from Monday. Here's the weather forecast of all major cities. Well, that's all for today, and thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.